Welcome friends to another r/EntitledParents video. Today we've got a crazy story of a parent selling every one of their child's items. But first a story from Celebrant 9, a playground entitled Parents. Some background, there's a pretty big playground close to my home. It belongs to kindergarten, but they allow people there after 4 p.m. if they follow the rules. There's also a swing for disabled people, but one of the ropes is missing, so a person on a wheelchair wouldn't be able to use it anyway. Everyone uses it since a few people can swing at the same time, and it's pretty fun to sit there. So me, a pretty young teen, was sitting on that swing. My friend, let's call her Elle, was also there, but her mom called her. She was standing a few meters away and talking on her phone. On my right, there were two moms of boys, Entitled Kid 1 and Entitled Kid 2, that were about 4 to 6 years old. Entitled Parent 1 and 2, the boys were running around and just playing. At some point, Entitled Kid 1 ran in my direction and put his hands on front of the swing. It swings sideways, but still, he could even lose his fingers. I told him to back off since I didn't want him to get hurt. He eventually did move away, only to stand next to the swing. If I hadn't pulled one of the ropes as hard as I could, Entitled Kid 1 would have gotten hit right in his face, and possibly have been seriously injured. Instead of being scared, he just started laughing. I was fed up with him, so I just laughed at him in an ironic voice. And that's when Entitled Parent 1 suddenly notices the situation. The conversation went something like this. She says, "What was that for? You don't have to make faces at my boy. Aren't you too old for this?" I say, "What faces? Also, aren't you too old to be on your phone instead of watching your kid?" They say, "Don't tell me what to do with my kid." I say, "I will, since you don't know what you should do." That heavy metal swing almost hit him in his face. He could have died. They say, "Well, if you don't like it, you can leave and go to another playground. You're too old to be here anyway." I say I'm too old to play and enjoy life after hard work at school. Entitled Parent 1 just mumbled something along the lines of, "Ugh, those kids." And instead of watching the darn kid, went with Entitled Parent 2 to smoke. A few moments later, Elle, who heard everything, came back. We had a good laugh. We went to sit on the stairs. I thought Entitled Parent 1 wouldn't bother me. I couldn't possibly be more wrong. I was just talking with Elle. I had my training butterfly knife with me. It wasn't sharp. I'd say even a butter knife would be more dangerous. We were away from kids, so I thought it would be okay. A few minutes later, I noticed Entitled Kid 1 and 2 watching. I'm pretty good with my Bali song and I can do some pretty cool tricks. It wasn't my first time having my knife with me in public, so it was quite normal that people were staring at me. Soon, Entitled Parent 2 went closer and tried to touch my knife while I was doing some easy tricks. I closed it with a quick move and said, "Please, don't touch it. It isn't dangerous for others, but you can hurt yourself if you touch it, since it is metal." Entitled Kid 2 wasn't too upset and just ran off, so I was sure he understood and moved on. Later, he came back with both Entitled Parents. Our conversation was even funnier this time. Entitled Parent 2 said, "Hey you." I say, "Me?" They say, "Yes you. Who else could I be talking to?" I say, "I don't know, maybe to Elle?" And I pointed to my friend. They say, "Don't be an idiot. So you have that thing in your hands." I say, "You're talking about this? It's my training Bali song. What about it?" They say, "I don't care what it's called. My son wants it." I say, "If your son wants it, then you should care how it is called. You have to know what it's called so you can buy it. You can buy a pretty cheap one for only like 20 PLN. Polish currency, 20 PLN is less than you would pay for a small pizza." They say, "No, my son wants this one. It looks way better than some freaking cheap one." I say, "You don't have to curse. There's kids here. I can't give you mine. It was really expensive and I bought it with my own money. It cost about 200 PLN. If he's really interested in Bali songs, I could give him my old one. I don't use it anymore. It was cheap and I live pretty close, so I could give it to him in like 10 minutes. They say, "No, he wants this one." At this point, Elle starts giggling a bit. I also couldn't keep a straight face. I smiled. I say, "Then sorry, no, it's not suitable for such a small kid." They say, "Why not? Knife is a knife. If he can have your old one, he can also have this one." I say, "This one is heavier than the other one. He could easily hit himself pretty badly if he dropped it, or have his skin caught between the handles. It's quite painful." Then the Entitled Parent 1 stepped in. "Well, if it's dangerous, you shouldn't bring it to the playground." I say, "It isn't dangerous for others, it's dangerous for the person using it. Even I hurt myself sometimes." Entitled Parent 1 says, well, it's a serious hazard for our kids, and we don't feel comfortable with you being here with that knife. I say, all right then. I put the knife in my pocket and hide that pocket under my t-shirt just to make sure it won't fall out of it when I stand up. Entitled Parent 2 says, wait, no, you were supposed to give it to Entitled Kid 2. At this point, I'm not even responding. Entitled Parent 1 says, you either give it to Entitled Kid 2 or we will call the police. You have a weapon. I say, go ahead. I think they'd also like to hear about you throwing lit cigarettes into bushes where it could start a fire. Entitled Parent 1 says, we're not done yet. They all walked away, but it wasn't the end. The story's already pretty long, so maybe I'll post the rest later. I wish a good day for everyone reading it, and I hope you'll never have to deal with entitled parents. Of course, they're the kind of people that litter their cigarette butts all over the place. Not only all over the place, in the bushes of a kid's playground. Now let's be real, that's kinda trashy, ain't it? If you saw somebody flicking their lit cigarette into a bush on a kid's playground, would you call them out on it? Or is it just not worth the confrontation, especially in front of the kids? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is from Artisus. Stepbrother, entitled child, throws a mattress at me and I get punished by stepmom, entitled parent. I talked in my last post about the regular entitlement problems I had to deal with and the horrible punishments my stepmother put me and my brother through. I want to talk about her son. Out of the 5 children she had, 3 of them were girls and 1 was unborn at the timeline of the story, so it's a house full of women. I'm a woman, and at the time my brother hadn't told me he was my brother yet. Can be stressful for a guy, certainly was for my dad, but this boy was awful. He was definitely mommy's favorite and he got whatever he wanted. He was also the biggest troublemaker and roughhouser, but he never got in trouble, at least not when I was in the house. Not only did he regularly sneak into my room, I shared it with my brother and his twin sister, he would lay in one of our beds and pass out. I never saw him or felt him touch me while I slept, but I was still massively uncomfortable with him doing this. When I brought it up, my dad was understandably pissed, but his wife told him it was a habit and my son is harmless. Not going to go deeper, but this wasn't true, not by a freaking long shot. Here comes our story. One day, him and I are playing, running around the house playing tag. Odd, I know, but it was Florida in the summer, and witches know I'm not swimming in my own sweat and swamp water while playing tag. Stepbro was younger than me by a year, but he was much bigger than me. His mother was a very big woman, and I suspect his father was a very big man, so he was a Goliath from day one. Me, on the other hand, I'm a 5'5", 130 girl who was probably more like 4'9" and 80 during the story, aka he won a lot. So I run into the soon-to-be baby room. Bad move, but I knew there was a door to the outside. Who freaking puts a baby room with a door to the outside? And I was hoping to get it open and sprint outside to gain some speed. I get in and run past everything, the door's locked. When I turn around, my stepbrother's picking up my half-brother's crib mattress that hasn't even been put in the crib yet, and pulls it back like he's gonna throw it at me. I laugh because I'm stupid and I hadn't yet learned about a gut feeling, but he throws it anyways. Now, it's a baby mattress, I could probably squat over it now, but that's not the bad part of the story. There were fans in the baby room, always going. When he threw the mattress, it caught the ceiling fan, sliced a decent-sized hole in it, and then launched it above and past my stepbrother. I'm white with fear. I knew we'd get in trouble, and my desperate fear of his mother had already been instilled in me at this point. He runs to me, tells me immediately, "Hey, don't tell on me. Don't tell on me. I'll deal with it. Just go away. I'll deal with it." Stupid me hadn't learned her lesson, so I walked out of the room to the living room with one of my older stepsisters and watched the TV. About an hour later, I hear my stepmother storm out of her room calling my name. This waste of breath jerkhat had begged me not to tell his mom so he could blame it on me. And so the trials began. I refused to admit to doing it. I pled my case, and he started looking very frightened when his mother didn't immediately go to his defense. I told her it was an accident, but it wasn't my accident. Her solution, me and stepbrother, were to find 2 textbooks each, hold our hands out to hold them, and stand there, middle of the room, till one of us confessed. Now, at this point, standing for hours on end is not a foreign punishment to me, but the books were. We did as she said, and when my father came home from work, she explained what was going on. At about lunchtime, my stepbrother's losing it. He's crying and sobbing, and I don't mean a "this hurts, I'm uncomfortable" cry. He's sobbing like his sister was pronounced dead. And there I am, in pain and tired, very hungry, but I still refuse to admit to the crime. My stepmother finally tells her son to put the books down and come sit next to her. He does so, and she hugs him. She says, "See what you've caused. He wouldn't be doing this if you hadn't lied." I told her I'm not lying, and her defense? He's crying. He's crying. Don't you think if he'd done it, he would confess? I muttered that he wouldn't if he knew the absolute butt-whooping she'd give him if he did. My father told me to go to my room, which I did, now beginning to cry. I cried for quite a while, just sitting there waiting for my fate. Finally, it's evening and I hear everyone get ready to go out for dinner. I realize they're leaving me, but I haven't eaten anything all day. So I scramble out of bed and I call for my dad through the door. He opened it and asked what was up. I began crying again as I asked him, "If I say I did it, could I please come get food with everyone?" I was humiliated for having to go through all that and then still admit to it. It was like admitting she'd broken me, and I hated it. He gave me what I could have sworn was a knowing look, like he understood more than he let on but was powerless to stop it. He told me yes, and I said okay. I ate a good meal that night, and the next day, he told me I wouldn't have my DS for a week. I got the feeling that my stepmother was holding back because a week without my DS wasn't like any punishment she ever dished out. It was too painless. I'm still freaking mad about it, but I couldn't care less about him since he's probably in a cell somewhere rotting. Does anybody else, after hearing this story, just have great disappointment in the dad here? Why is it that the mom is totally fine to go to the defense of their kid, claim they're okay, punish the dad's daughter, and the dad just acts way too whipped to do anything about it? "Sorry you're being abused, kid, but I don't want to rock the boat and sleep on the couch tonight." Our next story is from Level Known 4922. Entitled Parent Mom demands I give her kids my CDs. I say no, then claims I assaulted her. So my friends is also friends with the vile Entitled Parent and asks if she can come over to a party that I'm hosting. I say sure, why not, because I didn't really mind it at all. The party comes along, and I ask my friends to help me set up because it's a bit hard on me lifting certain items alone. All the guests arrive and the party's going well. I meet Entitled Parent and her kid, he's 12, and she asks if I can let him use the restroom. I tell them which door and leave it at that, but my friend points out that they've been there for a while, so I go to check. I realize the bathroom's open, and I'm about to ask my friend to call her when I hear Jimi Hendrix's "All Along the Watchtower" coming from my room. I go to check, and I'm shocked to see Entitled Parent and her kid going through my CD collection. I'm not joking when I say that there are cases everywhere and the CDs are either on the floor or the bed. I ask her what the heck she's doing, and she said that her son wanted to listen to the music, and she told him she could use my CDs. I'm just in shock and politely ask her to leave. She says, "It'd be nice if you would let him keep the CDs," and I tell her again, "Please leave my room." What happens next is, to this day, better acting than Christian Bale in American Psycho. She throws herself on my bed and, I kid you not, begins to scream, "Help, help, he's trying to R-word me." Some people came over, then see me in the room, and I guess immediately took her side and called for some guys to grab me and hold me. All the while, Entitled Parent's telling her kid to grab my CDs, and she tries to run when my friend comes over to find out what's going on. She sees Entitled Parent and her kid holding at least 12 CDs each, and she asks why they're taking them, and Entitled Parent's defense claims he tried to R-word me and pushed me on the bed when we were simply looking at the CDs in his room. My friend looks at me, and I tell her it's BS, and she takes my side and points out the camera I have in the hall. Then calmly says, "Well, if it did happen, then we could show footage to the cops." Entitled Parent went blank and realized that she messed up big time. She then proceeds to drop the CDs, then grabs her kid and runs. The guys holding me let go and apologize. I look at my room to see the damage, and I'm pissed when I see that she broke 2 CDs when she threw herself on the bed. In the end, nothing else broke, and the party continued like if nothing happened. My friend cut off contact with Entitled Parent after this, and from what I last heard, she was trying to tell people she was in the right of the situation. Rest in peace to the CDs, Pantera's vulgar display of power, and Biggie Small's greatest hits 2007. I was talking to a friend recently about how kind of cool it is to collect older CDs nowadays. How awesome it would be to just have like one of those library shelves that are just chocked full of CDs. If anything, just for the vanity of it, and thinking about some snot-nosed kid and their parent rifling through them, flinging the CDs around, and breaking some, really pisses me off. Let alone the fact that all these people ran in there and just grabbed OP and hauled them up by their arms real quick. You can just claim the R word and people will just fling to your defense here, I guess. I'm just wondering where she used that technique before, where they figure they could get away with it using it now. By the way, if you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below so you never miss any of my daily videos. Our next story is from Gloomy Ashido. Homophobic/transphobic mom finds out I'm non-binary and becomes livid. For context, I'm non-binary and still live under my birth giver's roof. So automatically they think this gives their access to my personal life. So about 3 years ago, I made a TikTok account because why the freak not? I've kept it secretive from my mom because otherwise I couldn't have it, or any social media for that matter. In fact, I'm keeping my Reddit a secret from her, but anyway, on to the story. I'll be titling her Entitled Mother and my brother Entitled Brother. I had just gotten out of school from literally the worst day ever, and to add to that, my abusive mother was picking me up. Great. I go into the car, she says, "How was your day?" I say, "Horrible, when is it not?" She didn't answer me or ask why, so that automatically made me suspicious of something. I say, "How about you? How was your day?" She says, "Well, to find out my own daughter's been freaking lying to my face pretty bad." Oh crap, what did I do? She says, "We need to talk, dead name." Oh crap. Oh no, uh-oh. She says, "I found out you kept your TikTok account. I had earlier deleted the app after my brother told her about my account. I switched to my alt, showed it to her, told her I only use it to watch videos, and she believed me and just left me with a warning and told me to delete TikTok. She says, "So you think you're non-binary? What the freak is that? I had a girl, not a question mark." I say, "Mom, She says, "I don't want to freaking hear it, you selfish crap. I'm not gonna have this fake butt non-binary stuff in my house. I'll send you over to biological dad's house. And you know he's a freaking homeless deadbeat. I'll just throw you on the streets. You have it so good." By now she's screaming so loud my ears are ringing. I'm on the autism spectrum and I'm easily triggered by loud noises. She knows this, but she continued despite me grinding my teeth and plugging my ears. "You're lucky I didn't give your butt up. I might as well now." She goes on about how I always lie to her face and that I'm being indoctrinated by those horrible liberals and that I'm just trying to fit in with the wrong crowd. She went on about how 99% of people who get sex changes regret it, which is completely incorrect. It's 1%. She continued to threaten to call my grandma to tell her that her sweet granddaughter is a non-binary T-slur. Not only that, but she continued to call my stepdad and tell him everything she assumed about me without asking me. Not to mention my TikTok profile picture was one of those I heart ones and said I heart women. That was not helping my case. She says, "When we get home, you get your butt inside and do your homework. Since you're a liar and have so many missing assignments." I had 5 in one class from a teacher who hated my guts because of my older sibling. I went inside of my brother with a grin ear to ear. I immediately knew he told her and showed her my account. He was 8 and had one himself, even though he shouldn't. He had quite literally called someone the N-word on his account and cursed, but my mother says, "He's just being a kid and words never hurt anyone." BS. Entitled Brother said, "L bozo." I was bawling so hard I couldn't breathe. To be honest, I was beyond a panic attack at that point. But he just smiled. His smile just got bigger and bigger. I already hated my brother since he was the reason for, well, everything. But this was just psychopath behavior. I sat on the living room couch and emailed my friends and the counselor. I hated talking about my problems because it made me feel weak, but at this point, I didn't care. This was on a Friday too, so I had to sit at home for 2 days and deal with my mother's wrath until I could vent to my friends and the counselor. I cried a lot. So much that I got a headache from being super dehydrated. At this point, I couldn't see because of my tears welling up in my eyes. Just as I was about to grab some water maybe, my stepdad got home. He looked at me, nodded, and sat down on the couch next to me until my mom got home 3 hours later. I got scolded, grounded, electronics taken away for the summer, and my mother to forever use it against me. At least I still have a house, and my life. Sorry it was so long. I have like at least 20 more stories like this about her though. Does anybody else see the clear favoritism going on here? I bet you $1 million OP could go on their TikTok account and swear and say the N-word like their brother did, and the mom would just about crucify them then and there. But oh, because they're the brother and they're the little kid, and because Entitled Parent actually likes the brother, they're just playing around, they're just words. Parents like this make me lose faith in humanity. Our next story is from Satara3. No child of mine will have a child while under my roof. So I have a ridiculously long amount of things regarding my parents that I feel the need to vent about. Real quick backstory, I've always kept quiet about things like this, not even venting to my husband, although he had a thing or two to say about each and everything that's happened to me at their hands over the years. And I haven't complained because I've always had it in my head, they're my parents, they did their best, and because they're my parents, I love them. But I'm pretty much done, so I thought, with this, I need to vent. I would start at the beginning. Honestly, this really isn't the beginning. It's 18 years into all the crap, but this is what sticks in my mind the most from the beginning. My husband and I were married 9 days after I graduated high school. We were renting a house that we shared with a friend of his. The house wasn't super large, but it was okay. We weren't crowded. Then said friend hit on me, asked me to flash him, to leave my husband for him, things of that nature. So we needed to move. And we needed to move immediately, but we were also young and needed to save in order to move. I went to my parents and asked if we could stay there. They said yes. We slept on a pull-out couch. We were only staying a few weeks to a month at max. My mother decided she wasn't comfortable with him there because no child of hers was going to live with their boyfriend or husband. So we were going to go, but he didn't want me sleeping in his truck, which is what we were going to have to do, and insisted I stay there. We fought about it, but eventually he won because I was pregnant with our first child. Except my mom then threw me out because no child of hers was going to have a child while under her roof. Trust me, it was a struggle. My husband and I actually moved out of state for a year because of the situation. And remember, like I said, we married directly after I graduated. I was 18 at this time, 19 when I gave birth. Also, it wasn't a quick decision to get married. My husband and I had been inseparable since I was 4. We just celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary. My mother had nothing to do with our daughter because she wasn't ready to be a grandma. Seriously. Fast forward 4 years, my little sister gets pregnant, has no idea who the dad is, lives there, my mom spoils her and my niece. 2 years after that, my older sister gets pregnant, she at least knew who the father was, lives there, my mom does the same for her as my little sister. My little sister moves a guy in. After a few years, they get married, they have 3 more kids, all while living with my mom. I asked my mom about it, and she says, well, would you want your sister to struggle? And my response was like I did? My older sister then moves a boyfriend in, he cheats, gives her STDs. It gets worse, but I'll leave it at that. One day, I finally decide to ask my mom about the entire thing. Not just about my sister living there with all her kids or my other sister, but throwing me out while I was pregnant with nowhere to go. And I was married. Not that marriage versus living together is a big thing, but my parents met at a Bible college, so it was to them, and neither of my sisters were. Her response was, I don't want to talk about it. It just is what it is. I've literally never been able to get even a small discussion about it. Nothing. I think the worst part is on me because it took 22 years from the time this one happened for me to decide to be done. I feel bad because not only did their mom brutally kick them out, unlike all of their other sisters who did the exact same thing, they can't even afford to have the decency to give some kind of closure and admit that they did it. If you just didn't like your kid or their choices that they made, and you kicked them out when they were pregnant because of that, at least have the courage to look them in the face and own up to it. That mom is such a spineless sack of sludge. And our final story of the day is by Holden Position 4. I suggested to my parents that they sell a bunch of my brother's stuff to get some of their money back for his rampage. They did not hesitate, but wait, there's more. Well, a while ago, someone here commented the idea that my parents should sell a bunch of my brother's stuff. So I talked to my parents about how they could probably recoup some of their losses from the birthday rampage by selling a lot of my brother's stuff. I was surprised by how readily they agreed it was a good idea. I mean, it was like a light bulb moment for them. Then over the weekend, they had a big garage sale. They sold my brother's bike, his video game systems, everything. I went to help out with the sale and could hear my brother crying in his room. All the video game systems he had were sold, and I mean there were a lot of them. He had a GameCube, a Wii, a 3DS, a Switch, PS2, 3, 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and a ton of games for them all, and they sold all of them. I was pretty tempted to buy something from the sale myself, but I knew if my brother were to be made aware that I had something he used to own, who knows what he might do, so I held back. The bike alone went for $30. They also sold his TV, his RC cars, his drone, and pretty much anything else electronic he owned. They're in the process of selling his gaming PC online now as well. There's a cheap laptop too, but it was mainly used for school and he was denied access to it for anything else. My parents told me that my brother's room had been stripped of everything but the essentials. While I was visiting during the sale, my brother walked out of his room once, saw me, and then walked back into his room crying loudly. I know fake crying from him when I hear it, and it was as fake as it gets. My parents know this too and have not fallen for his game. I asked them if he was going to be sent to therapy, and they said they really have no choice but to do that, and they fully admitted this was all their fault for enabling him for so long. I could have rubbed it in their faces, but I think the look they saw on my face was enough that they understood. For the past several years, they'd been in progressively worse and worse denial about their bad parenting. Friends and family have been telling them for a long time now that they went way too far spoiling my brother, and that not only would it come back on them one day, but it would also mean that my brother may be incapable of functioning as an adult. And if that's the case, he'd expect someone to provide for his every need forever, and I would not become his caretaker when they became too old. My brother hadn't shown much improvement over the next few weeks. He was still being a brat, fake crying, getting into more trouble, and even stole another kid's cell phone at school. He was caught playing on it in his closet, and my parents had to return it to the school to find out who it belonged to. Last week, I had an idea and suggested a family intervention. My parents were hesitant when I brought it up, but they reluctantly agreed to it. I'm sure their hesitation was because an intervention would put them on the spot along with my brother. Then, on the next possible day, all close family and some friends could gather at my parents' house. We formed a circle of chairs in the living room, initially without my brother in the room. My aunt spoke first, and oh boy did she let them have it. She had written an entire speech that we all silently listened to. My parents tried to interject from time to time but were silenced. When it came to be my turn to speak, I also read a speech I composed, basically repeating everything I've told on Reddit thus far and plenty more. My grandparents went next, and it just sort of followed down the line from there. My mother was in tears, and my father just held her. They both apologized to me heavily and said they were terrible parents and that they ruined my childhood. I'll never get that back. My aunt loudly stated that it should not have come to this for them to realize their own hypocrisy. And from now on, they needed to do better, not only for my sake, but especially for the sake of my brother, so he can grow up normal. My brother was brought into the room next, and he was seated away from my parents because my mother would have an urge to coddle him when he was upset. It didn't take long for the family to lay into my brother. He tried fighting us a lot, but when excuses like, "If only they just let me have my way," were about all he could say, we all let him have it about how that's not how the world works. He tried getting help from our mother, but she refused to look at him. He started huffing and acting like he was hyperventilating, then intentionally fell to the floor. It's not the first time he's done this. My aunt just told him to stop milking it and get up. He screamed at her that we were all ruining his life and that he wishes we were all dead. My parents were horrified. My brother refused to get up off the floor and kept breathing heavily to pretend he was having some sort of attack. So everyone just left him laying there while they each said their piece about why they were there to him. He screamed a random few times, but didn't move from where he'd laid down. Eventually everyone started leaving, and my parents had to actually drag my brother back to his room because he'd refused to get up off the floor. He's not used to people having no sympathy for him, especially from our parents. This is gonna be a long uphill battle. My aunt's offered to chip in for therapy, and my parents have taken her up on it. Let's hope therapy does my brother some good. Honestly, I feel for everybody in this situation except the brother. It's good that they're trying to do something to call them out on it, not let them get away with their overreactions. Getting them in therapy would be huge. Not letting them get away with anything when they're acting out is very important, I feel. I wish them the best of luck, and I hope they can figure this situation out. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another Entitled Parent story that was crazier than any of the ones in this video, click on that left video, or if you missed my latest video, click on the right. That said though, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.